We'll be looking to answer the question, why Abu Dhabi, and particularly how the investment framework can attract greater levels of investments into Abu Dhabi. To help me with this, we have four panelists joining us today. We have Man Al-Lakwi. Man is an executive director at Aldar Properties, leading the company's sales, marketing, communications, and customer management activities, and also represents Aldar on a range of boards. Man, if you could join us. Second, we have Mohammed Al-Husani. Mohammed is the Director of Investments at Abu Dhabi Investment Office. Mohammed. We also have Martin Tillstrom. Martin is ADGM's Director of Business Development and responsible for promoting Abu Dhabi as an investment location and attracting new firms into Abu Dhabi. And finally, we have David Bowen. David leads Al Tamimi's real estate department in Abu Dhabi and has practiced in the UAE since 2008. David, please join us. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Now, Abu Dhabi and indeed the wider UAE over the course of the last 18 months alone are seeing quite a lot of legislative changes, the introduction of 100% foreign ownership, the introduction of 100% business ownership across the UAE as well, and of course a lot of visa easing regulations within across the Emirate. Now, given these, what are the key investment opportunities that we have, and particularly on the development side of things, which exist in Abu Dhabi today? Should we start from my left here? Man?
Yep. On legislative, you have quite a few initiatives. You had the freehold law that came out recently, which has spurred a lot of long-term confidence, a lot of positive sentiment, a lot more FII interest in the region. You have the government policies such as Ghadan, you have the 21, you have they hit the whole wide array of economic segments. You have the new ease of doing business initiatives. I mean, ADNOC's 5-year capex plan of about $500 million. So you have a lot of these government initiatives, legislations, policies that all come hand in hand to collectively spur the real estate growth in the Emirate.
And Mohammed, as a result of these initiatives coming on, obviously the real estate sector will be quite a big beneficiary. Why do we see that? And secondly, what other sectors are you seeing which could potentially benefit on the back of these broad level initiatives?
Thank you. First of all, I'm very happy to be part of this platform with the substantial audience and speakers. And believe me, such event that we attend, we learn a lot, and we go back to our office, try to translate the concern, comments, and learn from such interactions. Why real estate in Abu Dhabi? If you look at Abu Dhabi GDP, real estate and construction is 14% of Abu Dhabi GDP. That makes around 28% of non-oil and gas contribution. This put real estate and construction on very high in our agenda. If you look at FDIs, 1/3 of FDIs comes to Abu Dhabi, comes from real estate and construction. And that's why real estate and construction is very important and very high in our economic agenda. And if you talk about other sectors, we always say real estate interacts with all other sectors. It's enabling all our sectors. We live, we invest, we raise families, and building communities through real estate master developers and real estate investments. And if you look at Abu Dhabi today, we have 20 investment zones where we allow FDIs and freehold context. And I would love to borrow Dr. Mubarak terminology. We have super standard infrastructure, utility rates that makes Abu Dhabi very attractive, if not the most attractive city in the region. And again, to Dr. Mubarak, Abu Dhabi is not one of the safest city. Abu Dhabi is the safest city on earth. All of this makes Abu Dhabi attractive, and real estate, real estate can play bigger role in Abu Dhabi economy in the future.
Martin, we've had the 100% foreign ownership, business ownership across the UAE. What sectors do you think this will impact the most, and how do you see ADGM's role in facilitating some of the major sectors within this?
Thank you, and also thank you from our side. ADGM, as Abu Dhabi's International Financial Center, we are a federal free zone. Local laws in civil and commercial areas don't apply there. Instead, we apply English common law. And we built up a system of authorities, a financial regulator, international courts, and a commercial arm, a company's house, to facilitate business in Abu Dhabi and the UAE. What we see, and since 2015 when we opened, is strong growth from quite a number of sectors, not only real estate directly, but evidently users of real estate, both commercial and residential. We see banks coming in, we see strong interest from the asset management sectors, catering obviously to the sovereign wealth funds, but also the substantial amounts of private wealth in UAE and the region. We see a number of various funds and investor categories coming in. Tech is one such example. Outside the scope of financial services, we see a lot of interest from professional services, from industrial groups, preferring the international legal environment that ADGM can offer, which gives perhaps a higher degree of recognition factor, maybe a little more trust in addition to the full foreign ownership that's now available for an increasing number of sectors. We see more and more sophistication being done in here as the ecosystem becomes fuller. There's more critical mass, there's more credibility in what can be done. And I think this growth is fueled by a number of interesting initiatives taking place across Abu Dhabi. The Rawan program is obviously a very important one. I think Tawasun's offset program entices defense companies, for example, to do more and more activities on ground. ADNOC's in-country value program, and for the oil and gas industry, obviously the biggest chunk of our economy here, the recent Murban trading platform, a financial ID so far, but that will lead to a lot of growth there. So I think our role in all of this is to be an enabler, to be an alternative and supportive business environment to help Abu Dhabi's growth and diversification agenda across sectors.
Okay, great. David, onshore or offshore, the legislations which are there to support FDI, how supportive are they, and how can we improve them if they require improvement?
Good morning, everybody. I think that's quite a wide question, but I think the laws here we have seen a lot of development in the laws in Abu Dhabi in the particularly the last 3 or 4 years. There have been a lot of new changes, a lot more certainty for investors in the market. I think we've got to bear in mind that the real estate laws in Abu Dhabi have really only come into existence since 2005, so we're only 14 years into the process of developing a system. But there are a lot of positive developments in the legislative environment, and we've seen that is really quite attractive for investors coming in, now particularly with the freehold ownership of land in investment areas. We've seen a great deal of interest from investors.
There have been 122 sectors approved for foreign investment. From your legal perspective, you obviously deal with a plethora of clients. How do we sort of support increased investment within those sectors, not just in real estate? In the previous panel, we discussed how real estate should be an enabler and to the wider business community.
Yes, I think we talked earlier about the 2030 plan and how we need to look at how the legislation is going to support the implementation of the 2030 plan. And there are things that are needed across the Emirate to implement that plan. Things like schools and hospitals were mentioned earlier. We need to look at ways that foreign investors can come in and invest in schools and hospitals, and how the legislation can be put in place to help those people. It's very good that foreign investors can now own freehold inside investment areas, but those investment areas are quite limited, and they're quite they're in quite central locations to Abu Dhabi. For instance, there are no investment areas where foreigners can own in Al Ain or in the western region. So I think that's probably where focus needs to be given to how can a system be put in place to attract investors to these areas.
Okay, and Mohammed and Man, the question I'd like to ask you is, if we do see development within this legislation and so on, looking ahead, what alternative real estate development strategies do you think lie there, and how important are these to the future of Abu Dhabi? And also, in terms of looking at exit opportunities as well, how do we sort of create a more institutional market within the capital?
All right. So macro-wise, we're a AA rated economy. We're dollar pegged. So looking at alternative investment vehicles such as REITs or other funds that have been slowly being set up here as a vehicle to attract FIIs is one way forward. The reason it gives you exposure to the underlying asset while governance and diligence checkboxes are ticked from their side. It gives them returns favorable given the ample liquidity available and where negative yields are in some parts of the world. And then when looking at our returns, it becomes quite favorable. So alternative investment vehicles such as funds is a nice way to attract such FIIs, and people are slowly doing it. We're speaking different capital arms related to real estate developers, and they're bringing in money from FIIs that have never stepped foot into the region. So it reminds me again of roughly about, I think, 2007-8, when the investment bankers first came into the IFC. They all rolled up to the shore, and it's the first time they ever set up shop. And now we're seeing that phase 2 with the real estate law in Abu Dhabi, with maturity, with transparency, even in Dubai, with the data from DLD and now the data from ADM coming out. You're seeing the next phase of people coming in. It's no longer the sell-side outfits, now it's the buy-side outfits coming in. And that's very interesting. And on several discussions, puts Abu Dhabi as a big point in the radar for them. A couple of reasons. One is the supply-demand dynamics. If you recall, we had a non-oil GDP recession here starting last year when you look at the data. Yet supply was very well controlled, big part due to us, thank you, which kind of stabilized everything. I mean, we went a lot into land for the end users. There was about 12 people in a household statistically in rural Abu Dhabi, so we gave them land to continue our sales. We're hopefully going to come back to apartments at some point soon, given that the population now normalizes and growth in demand and pent up for there comes in. In terms of exit vehicles, ultimately the capital markets are the frontier of liquidity in any economy. So that should eventually be an exit for that.
Okay, and I guess the likes of ADGM with their REIT regime can help support that. But before I come back to you, Martin, Mohammed, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, if you look at other sectors, there are many incentives programs that real estate can leverage from. Golden visa, waiving and reduction of government fees, including real estate registration fees, dual license, instant license, that will also help more people to come to Abu Dhabi and establish their business. And definitely those initiatives gonna impact real estate demand. But maybe the biggest initiatives that government announced in 2019 is forming Abu Dhabi Investment Office. Abu Dhabi Investment Office is the central body to attract investment from local, global market, and it is the center of excellence for public-private partnership. Abu Dhabi Investment Office, since March 2019, we launched around 6 programs, incentives program. That includes PPP. We're looking at PPP, couple of public-private partnership project. We started with transportation and public services, and the door is open for any opportunities for such partnership. Number 2, we launched a program for agriculture technology that is 1 billion dirham incentives program. We launched another program for corporate. We would like to attract corporate to come and do R&D activities here in Abu Dhabi, and that is 4 billion dirham program, beside venture capitals and credit guarantee and ecotourism incentives package, where we would like to unlock our natural assets. All of those incentives, we always say there is no better time to invest in Abu Dhabi than today. So the message to private sector, they could go and utilize the incentives program, the legislations and policy framework that available in Abu Dhabi. And we represent government and private sector, and represent private sector and government. So we always say in Abu Dhabi we have clear vision and plan, but at the same time we are very flexible. We are keen to get any suggestions and recommendation to enhance our regulation framework. So having a new investment zones in Al Ain or Al Dhafra, that might be a new policy recommendation that ADU works closely with the private sector to have those, let's say, ideas implemented in Abu Dhabi economy.
So real estate remains a very core focus within your strategy. And obviously having a PPP framework is a great way to induce investment and FDI. Do you think that's a new model going forward in the future?
There are so many new initiatives. I agree with the old panel, like build to suit or lease to own, REIT. We need to have multiple projects, and at the end of the day we would like to have suitable products to Abu Dhabi market. From financing, it's good to have lots of financing options, private equity, REITs and other instruments. And it's good to look at demand and try to build something to suit the demand, being affordable housing or lease to own or build to suit. We would like to see those different products in Abu Dhabi market. And we as government might act as off-taker, or some of the demand on the market will come from government agencies as well.
Martin, coming back to your to the point on the REITs side of things, but also in terms of family offices, two questions there. The exit opportunity and REITs in ADGM, but also the family office structure. What's ADGM have to offer on that side of things, and what's your take-up so far?
Thank you. Yeah, and address that and also pick up on Mohammed's point on innovation here. Just to set the overall framework of the value ADGM might give to investors in applying English common law and in directly applying English law, we mirror, in fact, what goes on in leading financial centers around the world. It is more recognized. It has a whole range of tools that aren't available or as easily available under the local system. There are different insolvency regulations, for example. There are different opportunities of securing rights by just something as simple as issuing different share classes. With the backing of strong courts, this gives investors and local investors different toolbox, better ways of creating transparent long-term investable structures. Might not matter so much in their initial investment, but come exit, it's certainly important to have a structure that the next round of finance here understands and accepts. In this environment we've been working quite hard on updating, making sure that our suite of products, of solutions, match the needs of the market. We were the first here to launch REITs, public and private REITs regime. We were the first, and this is on the family side, to launch a foundations regime in addition to the corporate vehicles and the trusts. We have been early on, and we saw the first aircraft financing transactions. We've been very active in regulating and building a supportive environment for tech investments. So we have regulatory regimes from every stage of entrepreneurship finance, from seed to IPO. So part of it is just setting the scene. The other one is then, of course, encouraging the market of using this. We have seen, from the family point of view and the ultra-high net worth side, a lot of use of ADGM structures, both from a business point of view, so the ongoing income generating side, and the more long-term traditional family office type of uses. On the business side, I think ADGM, by the merits of being an international environment, we offer perhaps more attractive environment to do business in, certainly when local family groups contract with partners elsewhere. Doing that in a common law environment with independent, strong courts, it gives a different level of confidence from external partners who might not be familiar with the local legal system. We've seen a number of leading UAE-based and certainly from the Indian population as well, major family groups using ADGM, from everything to specific asset holding to moving in headquarters and such. On the family side, more and more investment activities. That tends to be an easier discussion to have with the families than the multi-generational planning, but we have quite a fair amount of that as well, with roughly 50 foundations set up in ADGM. The assets held under these structures varies a lot. It's quite a bit of real estate, both in the region and internationally. We have aircraft, we have ships, art collections, a lot of financial and physical assets all around the world. And I think we see the more ADGM becomes accepted by local and international family principals, by the advisors, and I think UAE benefits from this as a whole, the substance criteria around the world, making it harder and harder to use the BVIs and the Caymans of the world unless you're actually there doing business. We see a lot of both family structures, investment structures and asset managers moving assets from those locations, finding places where you have a combination of good, sound, transparent legal regulatory environment, attracting market opportunities, so it makes sense to be there and do business, and attractive tax. And I think UAE and Abu Dhabi is in an excellent position to capture a lot of growth there.
And thank you so much. David, clearly there is a suite of legislation which are very supportive and offer effectively a 360 sort of offering there. Are you seeing greater levels of demand for firms looking to be actually situated within here, firms or even high net worths?
Within ADGM, yes, we've seen a lot of interest from particularly families looking to restructure their property ownership within the family structure. ADGM offers a lot of flexible different structures that can accommodate different needs. I think in the past those people would have had to look outside to BVI or Caymans, and they're now keen to keep that within the UAE, set up a structure within ADGM that has all the benefits that Martin's just talked about, but it also has more benefits that you can actually deal with the property much more easily when it's held by an ADGM entity. You don't need to go through attesting and legalizing documents from the Cayman Islands that can take weeks or months, and it's very expensive to do simple transactions. If you're using an ADGM structure, it's actually really easy to deal with that asset. And we've seen ADGM have signed a lot of agreements recently, I think with Al Quaim last week and Ajman and Dubai Land Department before that. So all the Emirates are now really cooperating with ADGM and are allowing ADGM structures to be used to hold assets.
Okay. Let's move on to transparency, and it can be to do with real estate or not, but why is transparency an important aspect, and also how can we look to improve this? Matt, we'll start with you.
It goes back to your question on alternative investment strategies. If you want to set up funds, if you want to bring in buy-side FIIs, I remember being in the buy-side investment management world. You want to pitch something to your executives. You want to pitch something in a different country. You need to bring macro data. Well, okay, macroeconomics, you go on the Economic Intelligence Unit and you find that out and you put it in a slide, that's fine. But then you go to the underlying data trends. And you need that time series of data to show you different trends and where it's going, whether they want to run Monte Carlo analysis or whatever different confusing terminologies that investment managers use. You need that data. So you saw that rise of FIIs, whether it's in newspapers and whatnot, interest in the neighboring emirate, partly or majority due to the DLD releasing data on all transactions. Where Redin captures it and filters it for the desktop junkie, if you want to call that.
That's my other name.
No, perfect, okay. So see eye to eye on that. In Abu Dhabi, ADM has started that recently. And you're seeing sort of positive sentiment and FYI chatter on that note. However, you need that data over a longer period of time to be able to make use of it. So that transparency of data by itself is a huge lift forward. Transparency is big. I mean, this is one of the major reasons we like being a public listed company, because we have audited financial statements. Yet we have to even be more transparent on it. We're rolling up our sleeves and doubling down on our sustainability segments, disclosures, for example, something that funds like to see. So disclosure, transparency and disclosure is vital in our market, both from ourselves disclosing more and from different agencies disclosing.
Brilliant. Mohammed, Man mentioned about real estate records in particular. Do you think without this, we won't see an influx of investment in the real estate sector in Abu Dhabi?
I think it's a culture now, and it's changing. So government started reporting and monitoring a couple of investment trends, be it municipality or Department of Economic Development. But end of the day, I think it's a collaborative effort from master developers, consultants, market researchers. All the players should work together and agree on this principle of sharing data and information.
Okay, great. We've got about 5-10 minutes for questions. I would like to open up to the audience to see if we have any questions from the audience members. And we don't, but it's fine. I've got some for you. From an international perspective, either legislative or investment practices, what would you like to see either brought in or adapted to fit to the market? David, why don't we start with yourself and work our way down here?
I think we need more visibility on how buildings are run and more accountability for management costs of running buildings, auditing of service charge accounts, this kind of thing. It's not really happening yet. I think this is something that Abu Dhabi could improve on to give investors more confidence that buildings are being correctly run.
Well, from my side, and I'll be a little bit more general than real estate in particular, I think there are a lot of good initiatives being taken across Abu Dhabi and UAE government. One factor that I think is in common for any growth is availability of talent. There is a lot being done. There's certainly more we can and need to do, and I think the discussion on affordable housing is an interesting angle in that, to be able to have all levels of the pyramid well catered to.
Maybe two main items. Number one, we would love to see master developers and developers in general to continue embracing innovation and sustainability. And the key things is maybe hosting more of startups and small and medium enterprises. We're very happy that hearing about the new initiatives with the Dar Manassa to design particularly for startups. This is something very good. We would like to see this initiatives among other master developers in Abu Dhabi. Two, we think we have, in real estate, we have enough expertise and capabilities that can be exported regionally and globally. We also very happy to hear Dar is looking to Saudi market. We would love other developers also to expand their knowledge and expertise to Asia, North America, South America, MENA region. We see lots of opportunities. And maybe government can also help and build this relationship, investment relationship between master developers here in Abu Dhabi and their counterpart in other countries as well.
Man, anything?
Four elements I feel are required underlying the real estate development in Abu Dhabi in the medium to long term. One, some have been ticked off, so the four are, in my humble opinion, freehold, recently announced, decriminalization of bounce checks, recently done, ticked, data transparency, which we've talked about and has been prevalent in DLD and should be more the case with ADM, and they have started. I mean, this is just using the title deed registration by itself. Ticked box, ongoing momentum on that. The fourth, for healthy real estate, is central bank LTVs, the big elephant in the room. banks should be able to qualify or disqualify investors. It can't be that if I'm to buy a unit today as a first unit, as a UAE national, to put 20%, and then I want to buy 5 studios that don't amount too much versus the vehicle of the house, whatever it is, but I have to put half the price on them. Yet they yield better, their occupancy rate will be better, but I have to put half. That to me is mind-boggling. So that's the fourth element that needs to be ticked off.
Is the reason behind that because of the lack of securitization within this market, and there's a lot of obviously real estate exposure? Is there anything we can change on that side which will help attract a lot more financial institutions coming into the market? Is this something which would help this?
Look, okay, so you want to securitize, so you want to take it off your books and give it to someone else. That someone else would come and knock on your door and buy it at a better rate if it was risk analyzed by the bank. So if it's a portfolio of studios, you'll be able to flog it off, securitize it much easier than a portfolio of villas that might not be able to rent as quick. So the securitization, I think it's like a chicken, it's not really a chicken egg. It's that will bring the securitization efforts easier.
Okay, understandable. Do we have any questions? Okay, still a no. Right, so looking at the broader FDI issue, is there any major sort of challenge that, let's talk about it on a UAE level, which is sort of pushing investors away from international investors, and how are local investment vehicles attracting those international investors? Mohammed?
In terms of FDIs, I think everybody on the market waiting to implement the new FDI law on the 122 activities. And the moment that this law get implemented, I think they're going to have substantial impact on the market. Everybody agree with the blacklist, where government will not allow the FDIs, 100% ownership. But the 122 activities, I think, can create big difference in attracting more FDIs in different sectors. So we all wait till the moment of the implementation of this law.
And David, Man mentioned the removal or the decriminalization of balance check and so on. On a corporate level, what do we need to improve on the bankruptcy side of things?
Well, there has been quite a lot of legal changes this year with the insolvency laws that have come in. So there's a lot more certainty now in how corporate insolvency is dealt with. So I think that is an area that we've seen a lot of change recently, and it's an evolving area that's getting much clearer. So I think everything's going in the right direction with that.
Great. Seeing there is a question.
Good morning, dear speakers. Thank you for the invite. Martin, with regards to ADGM adapting English laws, how do you precisely add value for us as developers? I represent a company called Siada Real Estate Development. Knowing that development in the UAE or in Abu Dhabi precisely has to be made in such a way where you have to follow Abu Dhabi municipalities and Abu Dhabi civil defense laws and UPC laws. How does ADGM, in precise, by adapting English laws, add value to our business here in Abu Dhabi? We've tried looking at opportunities in development in Sua Island, for example. We were told that English laws has to be adapted, knowing that in order to get approvals, in order to get building permits, in order to get completion certificates, in order to have all sorts of laws and legislations, you would need to go to Abu Dhabi municipality. That's the first part. To my dear friend Muhammad Al-Husari, good morning. Have you been working on or thinking about having a governmental body separate from Abu Dhabi municipality to dictate laws and legislations that are to be worked on in investment zones? In Dubai we have RERA, and RERA is made precisely for investment zones and development zones. Why can't we adapt such a model in Abu Dhabi that speaks, let's say, our language? Thank you.
Martin?
Thank you very much. Interesting question or set of questions. I think there are a couple of angles to the coexistence of different regulatory regimes. One is that wherever the real estate is being built, there are obviously a lot of operational rules you need to look at when building or operating real estate. If that happens to be on Maria Island, which is, yes, within ADGM's jurisdiction, we are government, but we are a commercial government. We don't know building codes, health and safety regulations, etc., for a number of the activities going on the island. So we have asked local authorities to come in, not our mandate, and regulate them the way they do on shore, not to have to write completely new building codes, for example, or restaurant rules. There, it's not making a huge difference, ADGM or not ADGM. Where I think we come in and provide local, regional, international developers and real estate industry companies with value is more in the financing and the management of activities. The fact that you can structure your ownership, your operations, IP, for example, if it's a hotel business you run, in more international ways, you can make it more attractive to either current or future investors. You have the options via REIT regimes or listing other sort of entities, for example, in running your portfolio and the financial aspects of it, perhaps more effective than you could before ADGM. I know other of our panelists have used ADGM for particularly those sort of purposes.
So in general, Shawqi, maybe free zones can help in setting up companies, but if you talk about physical development, that will go under Department of Municipalities and Transportation. And for your second questions, this is kind of a hope for us, but I think we're getting there. Real estate used to be a unit, then section. Today, real estate in Abu Dhabi Municipality is a sector with many people, working. So I think maybe this might happen in near future. Again, this is a hope where the real estate market getting bigger. It's good to have separate independent body to regulate this important and dynamic market.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I think we're out of time. I would really like to say thank you for participating in this and some great insights from everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can give it up for the panelists here, thank you so much.